Hey guys, another one take review, and today I want to talk about a certain album for the celebration of Easter as I'm recording and uploading this. I want to talk about a certain album that really it just means a lot to me. It really warms my heart how much I dislike this album, maybe the most overrated album of all time. I would even dare to say not even just of metal, but of all time. The Black Album by Metallica. Metallica are undoubtedly not only one of the most polarizing bands in all of metal for all of the records that they've sold over the years and all the influence that they've had, but also one of the most polarizing bands within my own personal sphere of music that I'm aware of. I adore their first three records. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets are rightfully remembered as among the best of thrash metal, if not the three best thrash metal albums ever made. With that being said, after the death of bassist Cliff Burton in a tragic tour bus crash, a story that's been told too many times for me to, retell it being worth retelling, I think the band went downhill immensely. Their self-titled record, which I'm just going to refer to as the Black Album from this point moving forward, was, in my opinion, their single biggest drop in quality from this point in their career beforehand. One of the Black Album's most fatal flaws is just how, ridiculously overdramatic it is. It's actually kind of comedic in a way. The album saw Metallica take a stab at pandering towards a more commercial audience rather than just the metalheads of prior records, which is respectable. It's a respectable artistic decision, it's a respectable business decision, and it's one that I would probably make if I were in Metallica's position. So it's a fine excuse to, get rid of maybe any edge that they had left on And Justice for All. And now I just want to say other metal bands can, go in a more commercial direction and still sound good. I mean, look at Megadeth at the same time. They did Countdown to Extinction, which was a much more commercial album compared to, say, Rust in Peace or Peace Sells. But the difference is Countdown to Extinction was good. Countdown to Extinction was a good, genuinely great record, and the Black Album is garbage. The reason that it's garbage is, like I said, it's okay if you want to get rid of your edge to replace it with something different to pander towards a larger audience, but replacing it with these boring, drawn out ballads that just feel like sob stories is maybe the biggest misstep that they could have made. Songs like My Friend of Misery just kind of try to be really emotional. Other songs like Wherever I May Roam try to be really epic, and all of it just feels like what would be on a original soundtrack for like an episode of Glee that was based around metal, like with the producers of Glee thought that metal sounded like they listened to one Judas Priest song and we're just like, there we go, we got him, boys. That's what this album feels like. It's that horrendous. And the worst part is I can't even call this album mediocre because it's just, not my thing because I think it's over dramatic. It's the fact that even those over dramatic songs fail in being properly over dramatic. They can't even be entertaining. They're just kind of cringeworthy, totally forgettable at times, a lot of times just totally forgettable, and leave almost zero impact on me when they're obviously trying so desperately to leave an impact on me, and it's just not happening in any way, shape, or form. With this weak attempt at a softer sound, Metallica could have at least been kind enough to deliver some half-decent lyricism, and they don't. It's obvious that the Black Album is trying to recapture the lyrical magic that was presented on Master of Puppets specifically, that sort of very intense lyricism that almost felt poetic at times, except it just completely fails in that regard, and again just comes across as a pathetic attempt to recapture former glory days for a more commercial audience. Songs like The Struggle Within are comical with their sort of like faux brooding that feels like it's trying to sort of make, again, some sort of emotional click with the listener, and it just completely fails. Other tracks, like the intensely overplayed Enter Sandman, almost feel like self-parody of metal to at least some extent. The kind of metal band you would see on a Disney Channel original series instead of actually a proper multi-million-dollar metal band. It just feels almost hilarious at times in the way that Metallica are completely lacking any self-awareness in terms of what they're doing here. I mean, the fact that the band recorded Enter Sandman and then they went, yeah, that's good, that sounds cool, and then the producers, whoever produced this album, I don't really care to find out right now, were like, yeah, that's cool, you guys, and then the guys that were like working for the label were just like, yeah, this is some hardcore metal right here. It's just so funny to picture that because it's just some of the lamest music of this time period of metal. There's also a large number of songs on the Black Album that just go on for way longer than is actually warranted. Songs that could have been relatively decent, like The Unforgiven, as well as just straight away, directly dreary, boring songs like Nothing Else Matters, go on for way too long and they just feel self-indulgent and unnecessarily so. Weirdly enough, there was a point only a couple of years before this album came out where Metallica could do a 6 to 8 minute long song and keep it not only incredibly interesting but musically intense and powerful throughout its entire runtime. I have no idea what happened here except that Cliff Burton was not in the band anymore, and I don't want to say that Cliff Burton was the only reason Metallica were good. That's obviously not true, but at the same time, maybe it's the only reason Metallica were good at a couple of certain things, like extended song lengths. My point is, those days were obviously behind them by the time they had released the Black Album. Even the instrumentation on the Black Album is noticeably weaker compared to previous Metallica releases. Lars Ulrich's drumming lacks the same power that it once had. Both James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett's guitar work is just kind of extremely generic and sounds like every other early 90s metal pop band that was trying to get some sort of mainstream recognition, and really the band, again, almost feel like a self-parody here. James Hetfield's voice is almost hysterical with how weak it is and how he's sounding like he's just trying to sound so cool and so menacing, and he just completely fails to do that in every way. I mean, at least Dave Mustaine with Megadeth was kind of like goofy and maybe mildly self-aware. At least Phil Anselmo with Pantera was actually genuinely aggressive. So I don't know what James Hetfield's excuse is here. It's not like it's impossible to be genuinely entertaining in metal. And once again, the fairly talented bassist that is Jason Newsted is left out in the cold due to poor mixing decisions. Don't let anyone tell you that it's exclusively Injustice for All that does that. Sure, it's not as bad here, where you, on Injustice for All, literally could not hear the bass whatsoever, even if you turned this up to 100% volume on like 20-foot huge speakers. You wouldn't be able to hear the bass on that album, and you would on the Black Album, but still, it's weak, and it's especially nowhere near as powerful as it was on the Burton-era albums. However, there are a couple more bass-heavy songs like The God That Failed that are actually kind of entertaining, at least in that regard, but still they just don't stack up to earlier songs and records by the band. While the Black Album certainly does have its moments of instrumental strength, there really just isn't enough here to stack up against previous releases, or even in some regards future releases, and that's saying something because most of Metallica's future albums were about on the same tier as the Black Album as well. Overall, the Black Album is where Metallica finally lost their once magic touch. I wasn't a huge fan of And Justice for All, but there were some genuinely great tracks on there, and I think it's a respectable album nonetheless, especially after such a major loss in terms of personnel. But the Black Album just completely takes these ideas that could be really great and just flounders totally. The Black Album, the self-titled album, whatever you want to call it, it was just maybe the first nail in the coffin for Metallica, or depending on which way you look at it, the final nail in the coffin, and the first in a string of god-awful releases. Really, the only thing that I personally gained from listening to the Black Album is that A, Cliff Burton was the heart and soul of Metallica, and B, a strong desire to listen to Kill 'Em All instead, frankly. Which is why I'm giving the Black Album, and I'm being nice about this, 1.5 stars out of 5. It's just truly an overrated hackery fest of an album. It just has nothing worthwhile worth sitting through its entire overly long runtime for. It's just a complete joke of a record and the beginning album for what would eventually become a joke of a band. So yeah, 1.5 stars out of 5, and with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I'll see you guys in the next one.